A few years ago, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook pivoted from Facebook to Meta. You were drawing out this grand vision of a metaverse, whereas the real revolution seems to have been in artificial intelligence. While you have been working in that sphere, would you accept that Meta was caught off guard? You were building one castle in the air, which is still looking like a castle in the air. You're moving incrementally towards your vision of Meta, whereas the real game seems to have been another one where you're now trying to catch up, but would you accept being caught off guard?
No, not really, on several counts. Firstly, you can't build the so-called metaverse. What does the metaverse mean? The metaverse basically means like a sort of immersive internet. So instead of looking at something on your phone, you're actually wearing glasses and you're communicating with people in avatar or even eventually in hologram form. You can't build that without AI. They're umbilically linked. And that's the reason why, far from catching up, we've actually been leaders in AI research for years. I mean, over the last decade, Meta has open sourced, shared over 1,000 AI databases and models, including, by the way, very powerful AI models, which help with the translation, the automatic translation of many languages, including the numerous languages in India. And we just last week did something which none of the big US tech companies have done so far, is that we have open sourced our latest large language model called Llama 2. What does that mean? That means that any academic, any researcher, any developer, any entrepreneur, any budding business person here in India, instead of having to build at the expense of billions of US dollars, their own large language model, because it's a very expensive thing to do. You need a huge amount of compute power and capacity, which generally only the very big tech companies have at the moment. You can literally just download the large language model yourself. You can download it from Azure on Microsoft or from Amazon or directly from the internet. It runs directly on Windows. And then you can innovate and you can create new large language, you can create new tools in financial services, in education, in health. I think that approach to open innovation is something we've always believed in, and I think will really help going forward as well.
But as you make more and more things available in an open source, the concern that raises is not just the good actors that you spoke about, but the potential of that open source technology then being misused by bad actors and then being put into play with the power of the computing that it brings to do very dangerous things. How are you trying to safeguard against that?
I think it is undoubtedly true that any technology, whether it's a car, whether it's the internet itself, whether it's emails, whether it's radio, any technology, it can be used by good people to do good things and bad people to do bad things. It is generally accepted that if you open these technologies so that you create a kind of wisdom of crowds, actually over time you make it safer, because it means that people can stress test these systems, they can look for flaws and failings, which the companies just working on their own, playing kind of whack-a-mole with their own systems, actually aren't nearly as good as lots of innovators. And by the way, it's one of the reasons why I think it's next month we are submitting our new large language models to something called DEF CON in Las Vegas, where a whole bunch of hackers come to town and they try and do as much sort of damage as they can. They probe these systems. I think that's a kind of open, innovative way of trying to make sure that these systems are not only really productive, but that they are as safe as they possibly can be.
From artificial intelligence, for a moment, I want to shift attention to Threads, which has gathered so much chatter over the past few days after its launch. And the question that while it launched with a lot of hype, user engagement and daily active users now seems to have come down quite a bit from the initial numbers. How are you seeing the manner in which Threads is playing itself out? What's the user case? What does it do different, which makes me, for example, want to move away from Twitter and come to Threads?
So look, I mean, firstly, when you get new apps, you always get this. There's a sort of eruption of interest. Lots of people kind of try and use it 2 or 3 times, and then it falls off a bit as the people who are not going to be regular users kind of move on, and then you kind of get a core base of users, and then you build from that. And we've done that before, multiple times on Instagram, on Facebook with new features. And remember, Threads is how can I put it? It's a sort of work in progress. There are lots of new features which haven't been built yet, which we will introduce over time. So that's not. I mean, that in a sense, we've done that before. We'll do it again. You get these kind of curves in the graph, if I can put it like that. But why do threads? Well, because I think there are just a lot of people who are looking for a micro-blogging site where they can share news and views and kind of debate with people about stuff, whether it's about fashion or whether it's about sport, particularly when it's led by people you admire, creators, influencers, and so on, who don't necessarily find Twitter particularly attractive right now and want something which is a slightly kinder alternative, if I can put it like that. Sorry, it's not called Twitter anymore; it's called X, isn't it? So there's always there's space for more than one of those kind of micro-blogging sites. The interesting thing about Threads is we're building it very, very differently to things like Twitter. We're actually building it so that it will become part of something called the Fediverse, where you will be able to interoperably share your content on Mastodon, for instance. So it'll be a much more open platform where people will be able to share content across different sites. So it's not a sort of closed, walled garden. And we think that's going to be really interesting to see how that develops over time.